welcome to Learn Free Music Theory, lesson number 40. Oh yeah, we made it to 40. There's only 10 more left as far, as long as it goes according to plan. Okay, anyway, so what we're going to learn in this lesson today is score types. So you might be wondering, what is a score type? There's different types of scores? And yes, there is. We have been looking at, staff layouts, so like treble clef and bass clef together, that makes a grand staff, right? If you just have a treble clef by itself, that's just called a staff, okay? That's a staff right there. But we have score types, so you could be playing something in grand staff score, or you can be using something in something called, oh, I said something twice. Said it again. You can use it in something called a soprano, alto, tenor, bass. So it's with 4-part harmony, and there's different styles and lots of different ways that we can do this, like modern vocal scores and other things like that. So I'm going to be covering those different layouts and what they look like, and open and close scores, so you can see what it all looks like. So this should be actually a quite interesting lesson, and it's actually very, very important when you go higher in music theory, because you do a lot of your writing in harmony in soprano, alto, tenor, bass. So you've got the 4-part harmony going on, and that's how you usually you write your harmonies in that style. It's called chorale style, not keyboard style. There's 2 different styles that you write cadences and lots of other things on. So that's keyboard style and chorale style. And so if you don't understand this, what I'm going to show in this video, then you won't be able to really understand what chorale style is. So, are you ready? I sure am. Okay, so I'll see you in a minute. Okay, so as you can see, there's 2 different types of scores here. Now don't they look scary? No, not that much. Okay, but anyway, so as you can see, these are actually the same piece, interestingly enough. This is the String Quartet, Opus 76, number 3, the 3rd movement, taken from Haydn. Okay? So, now, this is only the first 2 bars, of course. Normally you would do more of it, but when I have to draw this on the whiteboard so it's big enough for everyone to see, it takes like a long time to draw out a whole bunch, and also it's really hard to draw neatly and legibly. So it gets really messy on the whiteboard, so I just try to do as little as possible, because it just, it's not really that practical. So anyway, but it's practical to show you what I mean. Because, I could try to describe this, but there's really not that much use for it, because a picture is worth 1,000 words. Okay, so now, I was talking about, we're going to look at score types here. So the first thing that we need to look at is that there's more ways to write one thing. Now, in music, it's not always that you're going to be playing by yourself, right? A lot of the time you're going to play music with other people, especially back in classical times, and even bands these days, they play together. And so in music theory, we have a certain way to write music for multiple parts. Now, especially in piano music, you see this a lot. So there's something called a condensed score, and there's also something called an open score, okay? Now, the open scores change based on what you're actually opening to. In this example, we're using a string quartet, which has 2 violins, a viola, and a cello, okay? But you could have a quartet of singers, vocal. So it could be a vocal score, and then you've got, old church scores, and you've got modern vocal scores, and all this other stuff. And they all do look quite similar to this. I mean, they're going to be different. So I'm going to go through the differences, but at first I need to explain this. So, generally in music, and we're going to see this a lot, most harmonies are composed of something called 4-part harmony, okay? And so the 4 parts come in right here. So if we look down here, I'm sure you've probably heard these words before, but maybe you didn't know what they meant, or maybe you did, who knows? Okay, so the first one is soprano. Okay, so soprano at the top. Next one we have alto. Next we have tenor. And then at the bottom we have bass. Okay? Now those are the names of the 4 different kind of melody lines that we have. Usually one instrument's going to play each melody line, In piano, we actually play them all at the same time simultaneously. Now, sometimes we don't have, alto or tenor written in or whatever. You don't usually see 4-part harmony that much in early, easy piano music, but later on you do a lot. So for any piano player, it's extremely useful to study this stuff, but it's also very important for anyone that's studying music in general, because it gives you an idea of how you need to voice things and what notes you need to bring out and stuff like that. But I'm getting a bit sidetracked. Okay, so what do we need to remember here is I need you to remember this saying, S-T-A-B, S-T-A-B, S, or not S-T, S, wow, I just drilled it into you the wrong way about 3 times there. So S-A-T-B, 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 soprano, alto, tenor, bass. Just say that over and over and over and over to yourself, because it's very important that you remember which one is which, because you'll get docked marks if you get it wrong in the wrong order. So it's S-A-T-B, 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 okay? You can think of on Saturday, I'm sitting on a bench. Or Saturday, I'm sleeping in my bed, okay? I'm not going to get out of my bed on Saturday. So Saturday, bed. All right? That works probably, right? Okay, so S-A-T-B. So that stands for soprano, alto, tenor, bass. Now, first we're going to look over here. Okay, so look at this part right here. So this is the condensed score. Now, as you can see, I've got, my treble clef, my bass clef, it's a grand staff. I've got my 2 sharps here and the key signatures. That's all good. Time signatures there. Now look at this. I have 1 note going up. That looks good. And then I have a rest here and another rest. Why do I have 2 rests? Well, this rest down here is telling me that there's another voice underneath this note in the right hand, and it is actually silent right now. And they have to write that in because they're writing more than 1 line simultaneously, sharing each staff. Okay? It becomes a lot more clear in the next bar, but just bear with me now. So we have 2 rests here. This one is basically accounting for the alto. So the soprano and the alto share the treble clef, and the tenor and the bass are sharing the bass clef. Okay? Now, so when we move into the next line, now you really start to see a difference. Okay, first up we have a D pointing up, which is normal, but then we have another D right beside it, and it's a half note, and it's pointing down. What is going on? Well, that half note pointing down is actually the alto line. Okay, so this alto line, they can't actually write the D on top of the D, so they just write it right beside it, and what they're saying is, this 1 D is going to be played in 2 voices. So if you had a soprano, that person would be singing or playing that, and the alto would be singing the same note. The only difference though is the alto holds it for 2 beats. So 2 beats in, the alto is holding it, but only 1 beat for the soprano. On the second beat, it's actually going to the D, or the F sharp, because it's in the key signature. So we've got 2 Ds, and then the D moves to the F sharp while the other one is still singing the D. So when you hear like barbershop quartets singing, they're singing in this style with a soprano, alto, tenor, bass, based on whatever music they're singing at the time. So the alto's holding their note for 2 beats, soprano's doing that. Now in the bass clef, there's 2 more, the tenor and the bass. So the tenor is holding F sharp for 2 beats. So if you look at this, these guys are singing, basically the alto and the tenor are actually singing a D and an F sharp. And down here, our bass is singing a D. So we have 3 Ds in the beginning, D, D, and then another D down here, and then we have an F sharp. Now, 2 beats into it, we have 2 F sharps and 2 Ds, because this D now changes to an F sharp in the soprano. Okay? Now, when we go to the next one, it's going to an A, and also all these other notes are changing as well. So this F sharp is going down to the D, this D is going to the F sharp, and this D goes to the A, and that's an A on the top as well. So now we have A, D, F sharp. Okay? So that is, in a nutshell, a condensed score. So there's different parts going on. And so in piano music, you see this quite a lot, starting in grade 7, 8, 9-ish, that area. And so now, you can always tell when it's written in this is called chorale style, by the way, when you write like this. That's choral music, okay? Keyboard music is where everything would be bunched together, so you would connect these with one big line. So the upside to keyboard music is it looks like less things are going on, but the downside is that you don't get to see where all the voices are going, because when you do it this way, you can see where the voices, which voice is which, because of the stems. Now this is the point that I need to make. Now we learned before that stem direction, the stems always point towards that middle line here. Well, in this case, it's going exactly against that rule. What's going on? The magnet is broken. So the reason we do this is because if the stem was pointing down here and up here, you wouldn't really know which voice is which if you tried to follow the rules wherever they apply. So here's how they change it. If two voices are sharing this one clef, the one above is always, the stems are always going to go up, and the one below, the stems are always going to go down. So in the bass line, even though it should be pointing up right here, if this is written in chorale style, it would be wrong to point them up. It would be right to point them down. Okay? So this is the exception. But generally, you're going to know if you're supposed to write it in chorale or you're going to be writing it in keyboard. So it's really up to you. If you're trying to do more than one voice in one clef, then you're going to want to do it this way, where you're pointing it down to show where the bass line is and pointing the stem up to show where the tenor line is. Now here, see, these are going down, those two, the tenor, because it's the alto, because it's below the soprano, and the soprano has all the ones pointing up. Okay, and notice how the slur that shows these are connected isn't below here, getting in the way. It's actually above. So these are kept out of the way. So they're usually going in between the stems, not on the note. Okay? So that's a condensed score, because it's like everything's being crunched into a little ball. Okay? Now, when we go over here, so now we've got SATB. So this is a way to open it up and make it more readable. Okay? So it's like if you have more room or you want to write it in a different style. This is how you do it. So this is a different type of score. So this is called the expanded or open score. And now each single line now gets its own clef. So we had the soprano line, and it's going to use a treble clef here. So we have, now look there, you just take the soprano line and you put it here. Now there are differences though. Look, here this slur is now below instead of above. The stems are still going in the same direction because it actually just kind of worked out that way. But if it was higher, it would still have been going up there. But here, if it was, higher, like above here, now that it has its own dedicated staff, the normal rules of stem direction take over again, and the stems start going down. So hopefully that's making sense so far. Continuing on, we go to the alto voice. So we have a rest, which makes sense because we had one here. In this case, we don't have two rests on top of each other for the bass clef because it's kind of redundant. If you don't see a note there, you just know both of them are resting. So there's just one rest to represent tenor and bass. And then because you see the one up here, you still have to represent the other and account for the other voice. And since it's not playing anything, you have to put a rest. So we have a rest in the alto, a rest in the tenor, and a rest in the bass. But we have a note in the soprano. Okay, now look at this. In the tenor line, we've got a C clef. Remember when I was showing you C clefs? Now we get to use them. So we are using this one here. This is the C clef. This is actually called the tenor clef. Okay, the alto clef goes up a little bit. And maybe I'll show you that later, but not right now, because I'd have to erase that and do everything. But anyway. Okay, so this is the tenor clef here, and its middle C is this middle line here. So sometimes what I do in my head is it's like I make this into like a dotted or dashed line, and then I think that this is E, this line's E, and this is the A. This is the top of the bass clef, and this is the bottom of the treble clef. And so if this right here is A, then this is going to be F. So this is F, and then over here that's F. And we have F sharp in the key signature. it looks like a G, doesn't it, if you're thinking bass clef? You know, but that's actually F because this is C, so this would be, that's D, that's E, that's F right there, and this is C sharp, even though it's on a line. It looks really weird, but that's actually right. So, anyway, so now let's look at the stem direction for the other ones, like the alto. See how it was going down here, but now it's going up, because now that it has its own dedicated line, this normal stem directions apply. And so now it looks more, you know, normal that we're used to. Okay, so look over here. Now we don't have the slur happening up top, it's actually at the bottom. And why it's still going up is because of this would be the middle line, so those are going to go towards it. Here, this was on the bass clef, and here this is on the alto or the tenor clef. So it's in a different location. Okay, so that's why they're going up. Now moving along to the bass clef. Oh, now we know why it's called the bass clef. But why isn't that called the soprano clef? I don't know. I actually don't know that. But anyway, it kind of makes sense why this is called the bass clef now, because they use it for the bass line. So in this example, remember these were going down and we had this joining underneath right here. Now we still have it joining underneath, but it's going from note head to note head, and just like normal, and the stems are going up like they would normally go up. So now, what is the advantage to either way? Well, okay, imagine you're trying to perform the whole piece yourself. Which is easier to look at, this and trying to search up and down all four clefs? You can't really see them all in your peripheral vision at once, right? No, you can't. So it's very hard for one person to play all of this. But it's pretty easy for one person to play that, because it's like at a glance you can see everything because it's condensed together. So this is actually better suited for like piano music or something where everything's coming together for one person to perform it. Whereas this expanded or open string quartet, you know, vocal score here, or not vocal score, that string quartet score, in the soprano, alto, tenor, bass pattern, you know, it actually works way better if you are playing in a group, because look at this. You're like, okay, well, I'm playing viola, so where do I play? Oh, there I am. Okay, I'm there. So now, okay, on beat one, I rest. And so you just look at this and you can just focus on your part. You just read along your part and everyone reads along the same thing. And if you need to see where other people are and what they're doing, you can just look ahead. Oh, my buddy here, violin 2. Yeah. You know, like Jennifer's playing this line, and oh, cool, this guy's playing that. And, you know, you can just at a glance see what everyone else is doing, but you have your own dedicated staff. So, you know, tenor, people that are playing viola, if they're playing a lot of tenor clef, they're going to be really good at reading tenor clef. That'll be easy for them. But it might be hard to read treble clef for them, right? So, anyway. So, as you can see, there's some advantages to both styles, and so that's why they both exist, is because one's better for a group and one's better for a single person to perform. Now, also I want you to notice on the left side, look at this, I've got a line coming down here, and then I've got these little things hanging off. But over here we have that little brace, right? So when you do a 4-part score here, we always use this little, it kind of goes up like this, and then down, and then out like this. I tried to draw a smaller example here, but the pen thing is just too big. It can't really draw fine, accurate things with it. So it looks really messy. But anyway, that was my best attempt really, is just, so these things kind of go down a little bit, and they kind of hug onto the ends of this, and it goes up and then hugs this way. Now, for string, like instruments, you can see this thing, the bar line goes all the way down, straight through. In some like vocal scores, you'll have it broken up, so it'll look more like this. So each line will be separated. Each bar, it won't have the line going straight through that space, and it'll have lyrics, so words that go with that part. And so, you know, if you're singing like a Gregorian chant or like, you know, some kind of church music or some other vocal type of music, you know, each person's part, they could have their own lyrics, or maybe they all have the same ones, but they're doing different things with it. So, you know, they break those bars up to make room for the lyrics, but with instruments, it kind of goes all the way down. And there's exceptions too, right? Okay, so that is your soprano, alto, tenor, bass. Okay, now, I think we're going to move along, and I'm just going to show you another couple quick examples of some other stuff, but it's not going to be as detailed as this. So this, if you need to write anything down, I'd say write down the soprano. And by the way, this is violin 1, violin 2, viola, and violoncello. So VC, that's cello, okay? Because they're all from the violin family, right? Same thing. So basically, violin 1, that's going to be playing your most interesting part. So it's actually going to be the loudest part. I'm just actually going to add this on because it's actually important, especially if you're playing. The soprano line generally takes the lead, and it's going to be the voice that you hear the most, okay? It generally has the most interesting part. So the soprano, that's where you're going to have your most skilled violin player play. So they're called the violin 1s, the violin 1 group. And if there's a solo part in that, then the concertmaster is going to play that, or whoever's the best, okay? Generally it's the concertmaster, but in this it's a quartet, so, you know, there's no real concertmaster. Okay, so then your violin 2s, those are like your second-rate violin players, okay? And they kind of get shafted. They get usually some pretty boring lines. Sometimes they do get to play some fun parts, but in general, they're just playing filler notes that don't really, if you play it by itself, it's a lot of dun, 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 like that. It doesn't sound that interesting. Whereas the other person's like dun 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 dun, and they're like, oh, I hate you. Why are you playing it so nice and I have to play this? So it's kind of like the better players are rewarded for being better, and they get to play nicer sounding stuff. So anyway, then underneath you have the viola, and the viola plays, it's sort of like buddies and equals with the alto. So the tenor and the alto kind of intertwine, and they usually kind of go back off each other. So like in some you might go, it might be like alto going dun and then tenor going dun, and it could be like dun 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 dun. So the alto's just going dun 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 dun, and the tenor's just going dun dun dun. So it's like dun 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 back and forth like that. I know I'm a bad singer, but the point is just to show you what the idea is. So alto and tenor are sort of like, you want to keep them. It scared me for a second. Just hitting the thing there. Okay, so the alto and the tenor, you want to keep them lower volumed, okay? So these ones should be sort of in the backdrop, just kind of accompanying, you know, just chilling. I like to think of it, you know, sort of like they're the lowest tier, okay? So I like to think of numbers for tiers. So this is tier 1. Soprano is number 1, most important. Now, also very close to soprano, but probably less, would be the bass, okay? So the bass is number 2. So soprano and bass. If you actually just play the soprano and bass, you can actually hear the general idea of the song. You're not really missing a whole lot with the alto and tenor taken out. If you take the soprano out, it's very dry, boring. If you take the bass out, it doesn't have a foundation. If you take the alto tenor out, it can survive, but it doesn't sound as good. So the alto and the tenor just kind of fill in. It's sort of like, you could think of it like a burger or something, maybe. You could say the soprano's the meat, right? The bass is like the bun. You know, the burger is like the most important part of the thing, because I mean, who wants to just eat a bun, right? But you could eat like a patty and you'd be like, yeah, I mean, this isn't that good, but it's kind of doesn't really have everything. So it's like the soprano is like the meat of the burger. This is like the bass is like the bun, and the alto and the tenor are like all the condiments and extras like lettuce, tomato, mustard, relish, ketchup, all the stuff that adds a little bit of extra flavor to add to it, right? So I mean, you wouldn't want to just like pour some ketchup and some mustard on a plate and be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna have a feast tonight, and then you just like better get some relish on that ketchup too. Right? They're like fillers. They add to and complement the soprano and the bass. So the soprano is like the meat. It's like the burger, okay? Maybe it has some cheese too if you like cheeseburgers. then the bun, this is where the soprano kind of goes. It has a foundation, right? The soprano sits on the bun, and the bun and the burger together create like this nice equilibrium. But it's still not that great unless you have the lettuce and the tomato and all the other good stuff that you can add to it to really give it a lot of flavor and interesting stuff. So the most important, soprano, second, bass, third, alto, and tenor. Now, just as I said that, there are exceptions. The soprano line sometimes will actually kind of take a break. Like it'll be playing something really, something really amazing, and then it'll just kind of take a break and a breath. And then because the composer might be like, oh, you poor alto and tenor people, I'm so sorry. Okay, here's a really nice couple 2 bars for you guys while the soprano's taking a break because he's really tired from that, 13 bar solo he just finished. So, the alto and tenor sometimes have their moment to shine, and they might have something interesting. Usually it's in the case where if you listen to it, it sounds as interesting as, a melody that you would hear in the soprano line. So something that sounds not like bom, 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 but like bum, ba da dum, bum, da dum, dun, and then the soprano would be like dun, 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 and then come back and steal the show again. Okay? So the alto and the tenor are like, they sometimes get a little bit of fun, but really, in attention, they don't really get it all the time. And the bass will get it actually more often than the alto and tenor. So sometimes you'll hear like a bass line, and you actually want to bring the bass out a little bit too. Okay? A really good piece to listen for this interaction is, if you're on my channel, look at the piece called Pathetique Sonata, Second Movement by Beethoven. I'll put a link in the description or something. And that video, the piano actually is acting as a soprano, alto, tenor, bass. It's acting as a string quartet. And the top voice is the soprano, the bottom is the bass, and the 2 middle that are do 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 do, those are the alto and tenor voice. So you can really hear them. And so if you listen to that piece after you've listened to this or watched this video, you're gonna start hearing a whole new, dimension to the piece. And so you could start imagining, oh, that top voice is a violin, and the others are violins and violas going do 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 do, and then there's a cello at the bottom playing that bass line, just really going smoothly through those notes. And so it's important when you're learning, how music works, is to understand how these vocal hierarchies are, because once you know this, then you can actually kind of know which voice you want to highlight and which makes sense and which do you bring out, and it'll make your music sound a lot better. So yeah, go and check that video out, and I'm sure you're gonna see, be like, wow, I never noticed that, if you've never heard about this before. And you could take that piece that I'm playing there, the Pathetique Sonata by Beethoven, number 2, the second movement, and what's it called? You could take it and you could take those parts and you could be like, okay, violin 1, you play this, and then you could take that entire score and you could expand it into a string quartet score. You could write it out, and then they could be, go to town on it, and it would sound pretty good. I wonder if there's a video out on YouTube of that. But anyway, so that is soprano, alto, tenor, bass. So I'm just going to quickly show a couple other alterations that you can do, but nothing really. I've shown you the main thing of this. Okay? Alright, let's try this out. Okay, so the other 2 main score types that we're going to look at here are the modern vocal score and also the vocal score with C clefs. Now, I actually made a mistake in the last clip, and I'm glad that I actually caught it, because now I can explain it in this clip, and then people don't have to leave comments going, hey, that's not right, Andrew. Okay, so I actually don't use alto and tenor clef hardly ever. So, only when I'm either teaching theory or I did it back in the day. And, I'm not teaching theory students every week the alto and tenor clef, and so it's been a little while since I taught it, and it slipped my mind and I got it confused. The alto clef actually is the one where it fits into the note, into the clef perfectly, like the staff. And the tenor clef actually goes up 1 extra line. Okay, so middle C's here on the 4th line, and in the alto clef, the middle C is on the 3rd line. Okay, so alto it's on the 3rd, so and tenor it's on the 4th. So you just shift the whole thing up, so it's like off it's off center. It's not sitting in the middle. It just goes up, okay? And so what you do is you put the dot on the next space up, you put the middle part right there on the next line up, and you put the next dot on the next line up, okay? And you still add the two, the thick line and the small line after it and all that stuff, okay? So anyway, now, so vocal score with C clefs, S, this is your soprano, alto, tenor, bass, okay? And so you have an alto clef and a tenor clef. Now this is the old way that they do it. They don't do this as much anymore. I mean, you'll still see it sometimes, but it's kind of going out of style for people that are doing more modern stuff. This style over here is coming, that's why it's called modern vocal score. I mean, yeah, look at the title, right? I guess that kind of makes sense, yeah. So, vocal score, this is the old way with the tenor clef, the alto clef, and this is just like squiggles of, I was really doing this really roughly, like normally you'd have a line there and you'd have the two things going that way. And I didn't even, like here I have 4 lines and there I have 4 lines because I was like, yeah, accuracy isn't really that important in this case. I'm just trying to show you. So you've got the alto and tenor, so those are the important things to remember and hopefully not forget like I did. And then you've got the bar lines are stopping at the end of each staff. They're not continuing straight through so that you can have lyrics in the middle, okay? So vocal scores are used with vocal music, like church music and stuff like that. And also, if you have 4-part, like barbershop harmony or something like that, you're gonna be using this kind of style too. Now, the other type that you can use for vocal is the modern vocal score, and it's actually a lot easier to read if you read treble clef and bass clef. And because it's basically the same on the soprano and the bass. See, look, we've still got the treble clef and the bass clef on the top and the bottom, but in the alto, we're still using a treble clef, okay? Still gonna use it, okay? Now, below that, we have a tenor clef, or not a tenor clef. This is a treble clef with an 8 on the bottom. And so what that does is it's saying that whatever you write, play it an octave lower. So it's like the 8, the 8 brings it down another 8. Kind of the same effect that 8 VA, if you have it below, goes. But instead of just having 8 VA below for the entire line all the time, they just have an 8 hanging out there. And so when you see that, it actually gets played an octave lower. So if you're playing an E, the E up here, you're actually going to physically, or, in real life, you're going to play the E up an octave lower than it actually looks. And the reason is because the tenor is usually playing stuff lower than, what the normal treble clef is playing. But if you can read this treble clef and then just transpose everything down an octave, it's easier than learning the tenor clef brand new, right? It's easier to read this than it is this because you have to learn a whole new clef, where here you learn the same one but you just move the notes down where you need to. Because the range, it's not convenient to write it in the treble clef or the bass clef because it's kind of in the middle and it's crossing back and forth, so you'd be using a lot of ledger lines either way. So this solves the problem. So the 8 below shows that it's going at whatever you see as an 8 below. If you saw an 8 above on top here, it would say that everything is 8 notes higher than it's written actually. So sometimes you see clefs, maybe the soprano in a certain piece will have that. If the whole piece is, high range, they might use a 8 VA sign just for the part that they really need it. So just watch out for that. Okay, so I wrote a couple words in there. See if you can read them if you want to. You can pause the video and read them. Anyway, that's basically what is going on. You just have to remember that when if you're playing these notes, right? This is the trickiest part, is if you're trying to transpose into the modern vocal score. You're not transpose, but expand it. So say you have a condensed score and you're looking at the that tenor line, and you're like, oh, okay. And then you just think of where it would go, where you're actually playing it, and you just put it there. So if you put it here, an octave lower where you're actually playing it, now this thing is saying, nope, now you have to play it an octave lower than that. And so then it really throws it out. So what you have to do is, if it's saying to play, say you're actually playing middle C, you can't write middle C on this treble clef, the tenor clef here. It's not a tenor clef. the treble clef with the low 8. What you have to do is actually move it to the C higher than the 1 octave higher than the middle C. And so you have to write that whole clef 1 octave higher than you actually are playing it, so that when someone reads it, they play it an octave lower. Okay? That would be the only thing. So that's modern vocal score and vocal score with C clefs. So if you're going to squish all this together, you'd put a treble clef, bass clef, grand staff, and then you'd put soprano alto on the top and tenor bass on the bottom, and you would have the stem directions going up and down, and you'd have rests wherever you're not having them, and yeah, that's chorale style. Cool, eh? Alright, so let's do some homework now. Homework. No. Okay guys, so for your homework, this is what I want you to do. I want you to memorize the SATB pattern, so make sure that you know this really, really well. You'll never forget it. So SATB, SATB, over and over until you remember. And soprano, alto, tenor, bass, just keep saying that. Then I want you to memorize where the alto clef goes and where the tenor clef goes. So remember, the alto clef fits in it and the tenor goes up out of it. Okay? Next one. Draw 10 2-bar scores of string quartet, 10 modern, and 10 vocal. Okay, so what I mean by that is, so I just want you to draw out the beginning. So don't worry about drawing a full thing. So first what I want you to do, because I'm sure you've practiced drawing a grand staff, now I want you to practice drawing 10 of each one of these types. So in the string quartet, you're going to have this treble clef, then you're going to have alto or tenor clef, and then you'll have a bass clef at the bottom. Okay, but the tenor clef won't go up. It'll actually be an alto clef maybe, or maybe not. I think it's actually a tenor clef. I don't know. I can't remember what we want to use there. Actually, kind of embarrassing. Anyway. Just put a tenor clef in there. I think that's actually what it's supposed to be, but now I'm not quite sure. Anyway, you probably won't have to do that one very often. But actually, after I'm done saying this, I'm just going to quickly check some of my notes and see what the thing is in between. Okay, next one. Your modern vocal score is going to be treble clef, treble clef, treble clef with a lower 8, and then a bass clef. And then vocal is treble clef, alto clef, tenor clef, bass clef. Okay? And so what I want you to practice is draw out 5 lines in 4 different staffs, then do a line connecting all of them, then draw that thing so it's a line down and then kind of hugging it, and then draw your clefs, draw like some kind of key signature, and then try to draw something maybe with a time signature, so maybe 3/4, 4/4, something like that, and draw like 2 bars or something. So draw that 10 times for each type. Okay? And you should remember it by then. So for the string quartet, I want you to also, on each of these, I want you to label S, A, T, B. And then for the string quartet, I want you to put violin 1, violin 2, viola, and then cello. Okay, so it's a VL. Okay? VL1, Roman numeral, VL2, Roman numeral, VLA for all, for the viola, and then VC for violoncello. Okay? There you go. Then after that, then I want you to find or draw. You can choose what you want to do. So take 2 condensed scores and expand them. Okay? And then reversely find 2 other expanded scores and condense them back. Okay? So that should give you some practice, and you can try, maybe you could either do, depending on how much practice you want to do, you could just do, maybe 1 of each, like the string quartet. Actually, probably expand 3. So just do 1 of each style, just once. Okay? And you can find some in like, if you know where a church is or anything, usually a hymn book will have some sort of condensed score or an expanded score, so you can just look through a hymn book that maybe like your local church has, just sitting in a pew somewhere. You can just get a hold of it and take it and then practice your transcribing. It can be all intense. Okay, anyway, so let's do that. I'm just going to quickly check my notes and see what the thing is for the string quartet, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so I checked my notes, and actually I was right. You do actually put, you put an alto clef, but you put it in the tenor voice for the string quartet. So you actually use the alto clef, but you put it where the tenor voice is actually going to be. And the alto voice actually just uses a treble clef. But that's only in the string quartet, okay? So just remember that. You might want to write that down, okay? Alright, so I'll see you guys in the next video, and I hope you guys are doing well, and I'll see you later. Take care. Bye.